started.
Perfect. Well, thank you again all for being here today with us. So just a quick introduction about who these lovely young people are. They are part of our, and by our, I mean Bring Change to Mind, tab group. So let me tell you a little bit about Bring Change to Mind. Bring Change to Mind is a national nonprofit that empowers middle school and high school students to lead peer-to-peer mental health advocacy in their schools and communities. So our mission and all of these young people's mission is to end the stigma surrounding mental illness. And to create safe, inclusive environments where their peers and everyone in their school community feels seen, supported, and connected. So, our tab specifically, their goal is to promote student voice and input on our programs. So it's really important that we have the power of student voice to make Bring Change to Mind's mission even more powerful than it already is, and it's all thanks to these young people. So we're going to go around. If you guys want to introduce yourself with your first name and your school, that would be great. Let's start with Boomy
Hi, I'm Boomy, and I go to Syosset High School.
and Kate. Katie,
I'm Katie and I go to William Henry Harrison High School.
Chloe,
I'm Chloe and I attend Brebeuf Jesuit.
and Lou.
I'm Luke. I attend Eastern Hancock High School.
Wonderful. And Elias.
I'm Elias. I go to Community Montessori.
Awesome. Thank you guys. Well, I'm going to hand it over to Annie. She's going to facilitate our question asking today. And then we'll go from there. But again, thank you all so much.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, my name is Annie Cole. I work with Connie here at Bring Change to Mind, and we are located in the Indiana region, but excited to have this conversation. So this is just meant to be an open and honest conversation. You'll hear from these amazing young people around their thoughts and expertise in what teens and tweens are experiencing stress-wise, how they're coping, and also just tools and expertise, like we mentioned, tools and ways in which you can bring this into your school community. So to get us started, we are going to start with the question, just starting it off simple. What are stressors that teens are dealing with in today's world? And feel free to just come off mute and kick us off.
I think that some of the stressors a lot of teens are dealing with are just academic pressures in general. I mean, we've all had that anxiety about college, about extracurriculars, just external pressures going on, in terms of school grades, different things to do, and hearing that maybe from yourself, maybe from parents and other friends, and constantly comparing yourself to others around you. I think that's a big source of stress for a lot of teens right now.
I think a really big thing is just balancing your time with extracurriculars, school. Some people have jobs or anything. There's just like not enough time to get everything done and excel, and this pressure that we all have to be perfect in every area of our life. And then when you need to take a break for yourself to collect yourself, mental health, work on yourself, you fall more behind in every other area of your life, which makes it kind of hard to get back on track, and it makes it even more stressful.
I ask a really quick follow-up question that anyone can answer. Chloe mentioned there was a pressure to excel. Where does that pressure, where does that stress to excel come from? Is it internal? Is it external? Where does it come from?
I think it's a bit of both internal and external. I think internally, we have that stress inside of us to just do as best as we can to be just as good as the people around us. And it's also sometimes external, depending on your family situation, depending on your friend circle. Sometimes they push you too. And while it's good to have people that'll push you, sometimes that pushing can get to your limits and it can just lead to a buildup of stress.
Yeah, I agree. Sometimes there's people like your parents, your friends who like are like forcing this perfection upon you, but then there's also like it's celebrated when you do well. And then when you do average, sometimes people will say, "Oh, it's okay, that's normal." But it's not like you're not rewarded with that praise that you would get if you are really good.
It's a really good point that you do get rewarded for perfection sometimes, but we can't all be perfect, right?
Are there any other thoughts or around other stressors, maybe things that we haven't, I know we talked about comparison and pressure and that kind of thing, but other stressors that you all can think of?
Um, I feel like as things get more expensive too, I mean, it's such a cliche to say, oh, the economy, but I've had a lot of discussions with close friends of mine about who are well off or in stable financial situations who are scared about paying for college as sophomores or freshmen and having that kind of looming fate over them can add a lot of stress that might be newer in our generation than it has been in past.
I know one of the biggest stressors that I see is social media. There's a constant pressure to look perfect and to be popular and to make your life look exciting and all that. I feel like a lot of teens feel like they have to live up to certain stereotypes, especially following social media and stuff. There's your peers are going to pressure you and stuff like that. And I feel like that's one of the biggest stressors, especially in high school, is just to look at your friends and then see what they're doing on social media and then have to do the same thing because you want to look cool, stuff like that.
I know Elias, you had a thought as well.
Yeah, I was going to say a few minutes ago, um I sort of found it interesting kind of bringing up the like the pressure to be perfect and like we can't all be perfect. I think that kind of goes along with a lot of stuff in like just the idea of perfection being a stressor itself because like you can't excel at everything. You can't be the best in every single aspect of life. And like knowing that it can feel like a lot with like, okay, if you get your grades up, if you focus on that for a while, then you fall behind socially. If you focus on that, then you end up with not as much experience as other people. If you focus on that, then your mental health declines. If you focus on that, and it just sort of starts this downhill cycle with trying to perfect everything in your life. I think that adds a lot of stress too.
I think also kind of what Luke was saying about social media and like beauty standards of like feeling like you have to like look perfect and like dress a certain way to fit in at school. And of course this doesn't apply to everyone, but I feel like there's just this pressure that like and although like sometimes people will tell themselves like, "Oh, I'm not insecure. Oh, I feel confident in myself." Like really there's somewhere deep down that you do like have some insecurities and that can just like really drag you down over time on top of everything else.
I think there's also sometimes an internal battle when it comes to seeing social media and seeing this, and I think that social media will exaggerate that internal battle because there's one side of you that wants to be different, wants to be your own person, but then there's this other side that wants to fit in and not be too different that you stand out in a way that you lose maybe the social aspect or you just feel that conflicting emotion.
To kind of build up off of the stressors that you've mentioned, how do you see this stress manifesting in either yourself or your peers? Like what does it look like? What can it look like for different teens and tweens?
I think one way it can be seen, and this is obviously not for everyone, but sometimes people just keep pushing and pushing and pushing, and like you see them while they sometimes get the results they're after, that happiness, that spark inside of them can sometimes see to be reduced a little bit, and they might put up this happy facade for people around them, but you can see that there's something there that's kind of bugging them, that's kind of doesn't seems a little off and doesn't seem as joyful or as just as it used to be.
I think, yeah, a lot of times people will just be a little bit more down or they'll be easy to anger, like something that's like a little bit annoying for when you're in an okay mental spot becomes like a big deal and they can like lash out on you or be rude for no reason. But then I've also seen like more an extreme, like people will like become sobbing or like they just like can't handle it when they just like there's so much pressure put on you that you just like have nothing else to do except you have to like release the emotion physically.
Yeah, I feel like Chloe kind of covered it. But I feel like some people are quiet and they can isolate themselves. But then I've also seen people that get very irritated by the smallest things, and then they also get really overwhelmed with almost anything. So,
Yeah, I agree. I feel like I see, I'm sorry, but I feel like I kind of see people pull away sometimes. They just feel scared around them. They don't even know kind of what's going on a lot of times because they don't know what they're feeling a lot of times because it's confusing and it's an emotion that sometimes they've never experienced in the same way that they feel it when there's just so many things building up. And that often leads to confusion on how to deal with it. And I think that just makes the situation more stressful and more confusing for them and for the people around them.
I've noticed people tend to pick up really bad habits that are kind of like self-destructive when they're super stressed, like staying up super late or also getting super competitive with others about their self-destructive lifestyles, or like picking at your skin or any sort of thing that sort of relieves the stress by taking control of the situation that they can't control.
I've also there's like physical signs that maybe aren't as obvious as like crying, like certain like ticks or things that people do, like bouncing their leg or something when they get super stressed. But I also feel like a lot of times people just turn to their phones and they'll just like scroll on social media for hours on end. I know I do that a lot when I'm really stressed. But and that kind of just makes that worse because when you're already stressed and then you're seeing these social media, it just like makes you feel worse. But then there's like this addictive element to it that you just like can't stop. And also going to back we were talking about earlier about so much like pressure with all the school and not having enough time. Sometimes it's so overwhelming that you just like you physically can't bring yourself to like do anything about it. You just like are sitting on your phone and you like feel like you're stuck.
You guys kind of touched on it a little bit already, but like what are some ways that you or your peers are coping with stress? So I know you mentioned some of the habits, but what are some either healthy or unhealthy ways that you see your age group coping?
Starting off with unhealthy, because that's what we all love to hear. Um, One that I've noticed a surprising amount that I feel like people tend to either not register as a result of stressors and different like situations and circumstances affecting someone's mental health and their ability to work is is just like fully pulling away or like just giving up on keeping up with different things. Like sort of it getting to the point of, okay, there's too much for me to do all of this right now. Like, even if I start doing my homework now, it's too late for me to really catch up on all that. So I could try to and get a bad grade, or I could just not do it and get a bad grade and not have to deal with the stress of trying to keep up with it. And it sort of just being people giving up on different things because it's too stressful for them.
Yeah, I feel like that's what, at least from the adult perspective, I feel like that's what we're hearing a lot is that, well, teens are just like, it's the apathy, like they just don't care anymore. And it's like, oh, I don't think that's the case. And I think Elias, you really you hit on that well of sometimes like you mentioned that spiraling of how can I keep up with this and this and this and this. And so sometimes the easiest way is to just step back from it.
Yeah. Apathy, I think a lot of times is born from caring about something deep enough to the point that it gets to be easier to just stop altogether.
Yeah, I think giving up is like a very real situation that happens. And I think also a lot of times people don't see that the people around them are also dealing with a lot of buildup of stress and they're also dealing with a lot of the same feelings that they have. But everybody keeping it in and everybody just either giving up or resorting to some tick or some habit that might be unhealthy, but they're keeping it to themselves, that leads to other people thinking that they're the only one feeling this, they're the only one going through this, which I think sometimes just makes everyone feel more stressed, everyone feel worse. And instead of letting it out in a healthy way by talking to someone or by doing some other healthy way to let it out, they feel stuck, they feel embarrassed that they can't get through it on their own, which I think just makes the problem worse.
I have a quick question. You guys talked earlier about procrastinating, right? Or not procrastinating, about perfection. And I was going to bring up procrastinating. So, um, how many of you, I'm going to ask, how many of you would define yourself as, in some aspect of your life, you are somewhat of a perfectionist? Like you want to be, yeah. And how many of you also tend to procrastinate? So maybe you wait to the last minute sometimes to get things done. Anybody? No, I do. And oftentimes we see procrastination with perfectionism because we're afraid to get started because we're afraid we're not going to be perfect. What do you guys think about me saying that? What do you think about that? Do you see that?
Yeah, I think I've done that myself, and I think I've seen that just surround me because that feeling of starting something new or starting from the beginning or trying when you're behind, it's just very scary if you know that there's a very low chance you're going to get to that end result of that perfection that you want. And I think that leaves people, like, I think it goes back to the giving up. Like, people feel like, why try if you're just going to fail in the end? And I think that just is a big problem.
I think that perfectionism makes it really hard to put things into perspective because sometimes for me, even if it's like a 5 point assignment, that's like really doesn't mean anything. I don't need to get a 100%. I don't need to do my best work I've ever done. I just need to get it done and turn it in and get like an okay grade. And sometimes it's hard for me and a lot of people I know to just be okay with okay.
Yeah, I think it's just really easy in general to fall into the mindset of it's better to do nothing and fail than to try your best and still fail. It's really easy to fall into that mindset in any category, but especially with school and anything academic.
I do my best work when I procrastinate. So just because I need that pressure and I need that deadline and I need that stress. So maybe this is a different type of positive stress that I experience, but I need like, oh, this is due at 11:59, or else I'm just not gonna do it, even if I know something weeks out in advance. So I think I have a slightly different experience with procrastination as a positive thing in my life.
You're not alone in that. There are definitely some things that I procrastinate on that is probably an unhealthy way of handling something. And then I agree, there are definitely sometimes that it is easiest. You do need that little bit of that pressure to kind of focus your brain in on it and just kind of knock it out and being okay with it, just being okay and just doing it kind of thing. Not to change it a little bit, but I know we've talked about some unhealthy coping strategies. What are some positive coping strategies that you've seen you or your peers utilize that you'd like to share?
I think the number one thing that I've seen is music. Like listening to music is like probably the most popular form of this, like just like putting on your headphones or blasting music loud in your room. But I've also seen both for myself and a lot of my friends, because I like to do theater and music, people like picking up their guitar or singing and like letting it out that way has been something that I've really seen.
Creating things. It it can be very similar to what Chloe was just talking about of making making art, be that like painting or drawing or music. But I say creating things because I've also seen it in like less expected sort of ways. Like I've had friends who, when they got really upset, they would bake, they would cook, they would go garden. And it can show as a lot of different things. Just making something and trying to put your all into one thing at a time, especially when it's not like required or expected of you.
Yeah, I think like encompassing both of those things, just doing what you love no matter what it is, that's such a good way to let something out, to feel happy. And if you're a perfectionist, maybe make you feel a little bit like you're doing something perfect. And even if you're pushing something else out, it can just clear your mind and it can just make you feel a lot better that at least you're doing something that you know you're good at, or you know that you like doing, or you know that no matter what, that will like always be there for you, can really help your mindset.
I like to write out a list of all the things I have to do if I'm really stressed about accomplishing a lot of things and like write the number one priority at the top and then do the last thing on the list just to get a small feeling of accomplishment, like, oh, at least I got something done. And that sometimes helps me overcome the stress in order to tackle that thing that I was scared of doing or that I was stressing out about so much.
I think the biggest thing for me is just like talking to someone, because I know that some people don't have like the option to like go to therapy and have like professionally like help that way, but even just like talking to a friend or your parents or anyone is just like, even if they don't offer you any advice, just like saying it out loud. Or I know like people, at least myself, have made like videoing yourself or like talking to yourself, making your own podcast just in your room alone. It's just like getting it off your chest makes it feel so much better. And also just like getting out a good cry sometimes is necessary to, you feel like a weight is on your shoulders and it just like lifts it off. It's like great sometimes.
I feel like another healthy way is to take breaks from screens and schoolwork. Just kind of take like a little mental health break and just like take a small break and just think about something else and then go back to doing your schoolwork or stuff like that. But just taking that small amount of time to just think and to focus on what you're doing.
I think what Chloe said was so important about like talking to people, but I think you have to be really intentional about who you choose to talk to, especially when it comes to friends. There's always going to be someone who will just say like, "Oh yeah, that sucks," or like, "I want to kill myself," or "I feel the same way," and not really provide that feedback, that positive response, or say the right thing that you need to cope with your stress, I think.
To kind of build off of that, Katie, you bring up a good point of like how, people who are listening to this podcast are most likely educators. But how can we encourage teens and tweens to create that support network, to kind of identify those safe people, whether it is a peer or an adult in their life? How would you recommend that, or how have you gone about that? Like, is kind of like an internal checklist that you kind of think about?
Hold on. Yeah, so what's worked for me is just trial and error, just trying different people, and no one's holding you hostage to go back and talk to the same person every time. Just try different people until you find someone who's genuinely supportive of you.
I agree with the trial and error, and it's just like sometimes someone's doing the right thing, but they're just not the person for you. Like it's just so personal to whatever you're dealing with. And also, I think just finding someone who's willing to validate you and understand, or just be a listening ear, but not try to be like super like, oh, this is a problem. You have to fix it. You have to do this and this. Just like someone who's willing to listen to you. I think that's the most important thing.
Yeah, I think we need to start small. Talk to one or two people you trust, like a friend, teacher, counselor. You can also like join clubs and activities and find people that have like the same passion as you. And then you guys could be going to the same thing, so you guys can talk about like your common interests and stuff like that. Just finding someone who you trust and all that.
And I think also sometimes you can find yourself stuck in like a toxic friend group or just like people around you who you're friends with them, you want to be around them, but they're not the people who can listen to you in that circumstance. They're not the people who can help you. And I think recognizing that and not just trusting those people who you think are the only ones that can help you, there will be someone else out there that may be a little bit harder to find. Maybe it might be a little more stressful to find them, but once you find them, I think that it can help a lot relieve that stress, and it would be worth it in the end to go out and take that leap. And while it might be harder to leave the people surrounding you, and it will be worth it if you just take that leap and do the harder thing to find someone who's there to listen.
I feel like it's really easy to say that there's going to be someone who's out there to listen. And I'm very fortunate to have many people in my life who I'm able to talk to and who I feel comfortable talking to. But it's also some people just aren't comfortable or aren't ready yet on their own personal experience and their own journey to talk to anyone. And sometimes that's just okay in the moment. And although it's probably one of the healthiest ways to get to talk about your emotions and talk about your experiences, but some people just aren't ready yet. So I think that's just like important also for the adults to understand that sometimes kids aren't ready to talk about it, aren't ready to come to people. And that's just really important to keep in mind.
It's a really great segue. I know our next kind of question that we had in mind was also like looking at what are tangible ways that adults in a school community can be part of a young person's support network. But then also, you guys have just mentioned some amazing ideas about how youth can build their own support network. But how would you like an adult to address that with you? Like you mentioned, Chloe, sometimes young people just aren't ready for that yet. But how would you like an adult to approach you and say like, "Hey, I've been noticing that you've been kind of struggling lately." Like how can adults be this support system?
I feel like adults can make a big impact just by being approachable and listening without judgment. I feel like one of the big things is creating a safe space, just starting with some small talk and then just making the space feel real safe and everything. And then just checking in regularly with you guys. Just like how's your day going and stuff like that. Just that way they're listening and they want you to know that they're willing to listen and all that.
Can I ask a real quick question? I'd like,
Also,
oh, sorry. I was just going to really quick following up what Luke said about creating a safe space. Can you guys tell me just really quickly, like, what makes you feel safe when you're at school? Like, are there specific things, or think about a teacher whose classroom feels safe to you, or an adult that you feel safe with at school? What specifically have they done, said? What does the space look like? What makes it feel safe?
I think one at least tangible way that I'm able to like see a safe space is like even as simple as like a teacher willing to give like an extension on homework, knowing that they're willing to like give something to you because they actually care about like and they're willing to be understanding to give you something that like they don't have to, but that's just like makes me feel so much more safe around a teacher.
Also, I think teachers who sometimes give personal experiences or they're not just like straight to the books, they're not just like lecture and they don't put their like superiority complex on the students. They don't try to act above them. And I'm not like I don't think a teacher should be pushy either because I think that can become in a way where a student feels almost too comfortable with them in a way that they don't feel them as someone to talk to as a social network and someone who can help them. But I think somewhere in between, somewhere where there is comfort and there is a sense of it's a conversation, not just a one-way classroom where the teacher's in charge and the kids are subordinate in that way, is a very important thing.
I was actually right about to say the same thing. I think a big thing is making sure that students know that they can trust you. And one of the easiest ways to do that without sort of pushing them or, you know, like getting too personal is sharing, like, hey, I've also struggled with this. Like, I've struggled with depression before. I know it can be hard to keep up with stuff, or it can seem very daunting to reach out to people. Um, and like not even getting into big details, but letting them know that they aren't alone and that you can relate to them and know what they're going through, even if not exactly, is a big thing that helps build trust very easily without getting too personal.
Also, I think for like a teacher or counselor, they could just leave an open conversation, just like telling a student that they're willing to listen and they're ready, but whenever the student's ready, because I think pushing a student into a conversation they aren't ready for can just make it worse.
Also, I think some teachers have this thing where, like, their classroom, they kind of act like that's the only thing the kids have going on. Like, their only priority in life is that one class, that one subject, whatever that thing that they're doing. And I think just understanding that people have like other things in life going on. And while obviously that class, whatever they're teaching, is very important, you can't expect a kid, like every kid, to give 100% every day and there's going to be certain off days for different kids and just recognizing that and not punishing the kids for needing some days or it shouldn't be a repeated thing, but it's needing some times where to just relax, I think should be more open.
I think Chloe, you had a nice relatable response to that. It looked like. I know also I think kind of coming off that I have a quick kind of question follow-up because I know my own experiences with when I was in college and high school and now even in grad school, professors or teachers will say, just let me know if you need anything, like I'm here. But how can they like follow through with that? Because I feel like that's a big thing. Like you guys mentioned the perfectionism and that kind of pressure to be perfect. So that kind of contradicts asking for help sometimes, I feel like, of saying like, hey, things are becoming overwhelming. Can I get an extension? how do you feel like adults and teachers or educators can kind of tangibly implement that rather than just saying, I'm here if you need anything, please talk to me. Like how do you like it to actually like what would actually work? That sounds kind of a weird way to put it, but what would you like?
Familiarizing yourself with resources is definitely a good start so that even if you yourself don't have much that you can do to help immediately, then you can offer those to people for them to get help somewhere. And I think being being reasonable with stuff and willing to sort of accommodate people with like if a student struggles with loud noises and you're going to be doing like an activity or if you're going to be playing a video that has a bunch of loud noises, maybe offer them headphones or say that they can step out. Um, or like if something happens with them, offering them that extra time or maybe like giving them like not changing it, but maybe sort of softening guidelines, I guess. I'm trying to think of how to phrase it, but like,
Would you say, if I'm understanding you correctly, would you say kind of like having an adult recognize it, take that ownership and recognize it, but then also kind of putting the autonomy in the hands of the student to kind of
yeah,
follow through with what they would feel is best.
yeah,
Okay.
I wonder if part of it too is adults meeting students, youth where they're at, instead of expecting the youth to meet the adult where they're at. I wonder if
that's
that's
kind of what I was trying to say.
I think it's just important for the teacher to give kind of what they can. Like it doesn't have to be like a full on like crazy something, I don't know, just like simple things. I like go to a really small school and like some of my teachers will like smile at me and say hi and call me by my name and I think that's just like I know not everyone in like a large school has like can do that and experience that, but I think if like teachers can start being a little bit more personal and like actually knowing their student as a person rather than as a student is like super important because students are people and they're going through people problems, not just student problems.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think it's somewhat unreasonable to expect teachers to teach and be therapists and be counselors and be a coach on top of whatever they're doing. But just it's mostly about the atmosphere that they create and maybe having like resources hung up in their classroom. It's not groundbreaking, but it can be something that just makes students feel seen, I guess, in a sense.
Yeah, and I mean, I totally agree. And coming from like a big school, I think that's totally doable because I know I have teachers that'll take that initiative. And while they don't have to know every detail about you, they don't need to give like their whole life just trying to help you. Just knowing a kid's name, asking them, oh, what are you doing this weekend? Or like if they play a sport, how'd the game go? Just like making small talk, just coming off friendly, that opens the door for a kid to feel comfortable to come to them on their own if they need that too. And it just creates that atmosphere like we were talking about before.
I think I'm curious what you guys think about this. I think it goes down to we're all human, right? And so when teachers get stressed, we like to remind teachers like you are a human first, a teacher second, right? But I think we also need to remember that you guys are humans first and students second. School's important, don't get me wrong, but you're a human first. What do you guys think about that?
Do you feel there are ways as we kind of wrap this up to build off of Connie's question, and just and her thoughts just there, are there tangible ways that schools can really prioritize the humanness in all of us Like, what are some simple ways that they can really prioritize our humanness first?
I mean, I think just one thing that'll help is just making school more than about learning. And I know schools try to do that, but I think more of that always helps. I know a lot of like one week we have Spirit Week in our school where it's just there's still learning going on, but school is also a lot more. It's like people are dressing up in different costumes, and it's like they have like a carnival going on the weekend. And while that's not feasible all the time, just little small things that happen, it reminds kids that it might be a school, but it can also be a place to have fun, to let out your emotions, and it doesn't have to be a place where you're just stuck like reading a book or learning a math lesson.
Yeah, at my school, we have like pep rallies sometimes, or we do like multiple spirit weeks, like for homecoming week, and we do like a blues week in January. And then also we have these things called PRTs. So we have like two 30-minute breaks throughout the day. And I know not every school can do that, but that's really worked for my school to like prioritize like people having a social life within school, and it's not just like grind, go to class, study, whatever. It's like you actually get to like live life. And for me that's just felt like school isn't such like a chore anymore. It's just like I'm living my life, and like school is just like a part of it, and it's kind of woven in. And that just like thinking that way to give students a little bit more free time, or like a way that they can just like interact with their friends or even just be by themselves to do kind of what they want to do.
Yeah, at my school, we're a smaller school, but we have like what we call brain breaks, and we have it's like a 10-minute period within each class where we just take time and we can like walk the halls, go get a drink, just take like a little mental health break and then go back to school. But I feel like that allows us to like kind of stop thinking about school for a second and just kind of enjoy like what we're doing and just make the school feel like a safe space. Like you can just go out into the hall and talk to your friends, but then realize that you have to go back and do schoolwork and stuff. So you're still doing school, but you're also enjoying your life as it is.
As we're approaching kind of the end of this conversation, I just want to kind of end with, are there any other final thoughts, tips, takeaways, anything that kind of maybe we haven't chatted about yet that you want to make sure to include in this before we wrap up?
I feel like one thing schools really need to do is make sure that we have resources posted. I feel like that's one thing that doesn't get posted a lot is just random mental health resources, just like websites and QR codes that you can go to and just look at different resources and see what can help. And because not everybody wants to go and talk to a person in person. So it'd be nice to have like resources posted in the school of like places where you can go and talk and stuff like that.
Any other last thoughts? Well, before I hit stop record, just thank you all to everyone who's listening in, but then also a round of applause to you all, and just thank you for sharing your thoughts and expertise. And we hope this was helpful for everyone.